My friends, I am coming to you 2 days after recording the following podcast on law enforcement officer and firefighter mental health and suicide. I would have never guessed that just 2 days after recording that podcast, I would receive news that my nephew, who is in the Corrections Academy, would take his own life. If you're struggling with thoughts of suicide, if you're struggling with depression or any kind of darkness in your life right now, just know that help is available. There are resources within your law enforcement agency. There are people who care, and you just need to reach out. If nothing else, pick up your phone and dial 988 for the crisis hotline. You can even text the crisis hotline at 988. Do not go through this alone. There is help for those who are feeling depressed and those who are feeling as if they want to commit suicide. The world is better with you in it. Welcome to First Responder Fitness with Carl Wimmer, where armor is forged through mental, spiritual, and physical preparation. And welcome to Frontline Fitness with Carl Wimmer. I am so honored to have you with us today, wherever you may be listening, whether you are listening on Spotify or YouTube or any of the other fantastic places where you get this podcast. I welcome you. My friends, this might be the most important episode I ever record for you. And that's saying a lot because I am absolutely passionate about helping you flip the script on your health, changing the metabolic disease that you might have, turning around years of nutritional abuse and a lack of exercise, gaining muscle, losing fat, reversing and reducing the threat of atherosclerosis and heart attacks and strokes and type 2 diabetes. All of these things through fitness, nutrition, and just getting those things right. I am so passionate about those things. I hope you know that. I just want you to change your life, and I want you to have a long, prosperous life well into retirement, looking forward to that beautiful public safety pension, spending it with your family, your loved ones, your friends, doing what you want to do. But we've got to make it there. And physical fitness is just one side of this. Every single year, there are law enforcement officers and firefighters who never make it to retirement, who never fulfill or complete their career to see the light at the end of the tunnel and receive their pension or have a long, healthful life because they fall victim to mental health issues. And I want to pull the freaking curtain back and talk about mental health issues in the first responder community because they are very real. And whether you think they're real or not, or whether you have some kind of preconceived idea about them, I don't care. We need to discuss it. My friends, we are losing our best and our brightest to suicide and mental health issues every single year. It is absolutely taking the lives of some of our best people. And frankly, it's taking the lives of our brothers, our sisters, and our friends. You want to make the most hardened, grizzled firefighter or police officer teary-eyed? Play taps on a trumpet. Play the bagpipes. And memories of fallen friends and their funerals will come flooding back into their memory. It's been too many for me. I've lost too many friends, too many coworkers to the disease of mental health problems, depression, and to suicide. And there's this stigma, there's a stigma in society, but there's even a worse stigma in our line of work. Why? Well, because we're firefighters, we're police officers, we're badass, right? We aren't supposed to have mental problems. We're supposed to be able to deal with it. Oh, nonsense. Nonsense. You know, it's that kind of attitude that makes it so that people don't necessarily want to go get the mental help they need, to get the counseling they need. Now, I've seen a lot of progress in my career on this issue. It used to be that if an officer was in an officer-involved shooting or in a traumatic event, that the police department or the would offer, hey, if you need someone to talk to, we can send you, leaving it up to the officer. There are not many officers I know, and I was a SWAT team leader. I hung out with SWAT guys a lot. I hung out with some of the best and brightest in the entire law enforcement. I couldn't imagine working with better men and women, but I don't know any of them who would have said, yep, that's me. Let me go get mental counseling. Let me go get counseling. Sign me up for that. You leave it up to them, most of them will not do it. And thankfully, that's starting to change in many law enforcement agencies, where they mandate that if you're involved in a critical incident, they mandate that you go to a counselor and talk and let them sign off before you get to go back to work. And I think that's a huge thing. Shame on those agencies that don't yet do that, because what you're essentially doing is you're asking the officers to admit what they feel is a weakness. It's not a weakness, but they would feel that it is, and you're asking them to admit it. And that is that there is no shame on the officers, but there is shame in those policies and those departments that don't mandate it. As a firefighter, you are much more at risk of from taking your own life than you are losing your life in an emergency situation, like in a fire from smoke inhalation or from being on duty, a situation on duty. And I don't even have to tell you, as a law enforcement officer, you are many, many times more likely to die at your own hand using your own sidearm than you are in a violent confrontation with a criminal. I would never advocate this. I do not advocate gun grabs. I do not advocate gun bans, anything like that. But just to drive the point home, it would almost be safer to be a law enforcement officer in America if we sent police officers out like they do in some countries where they don't have guns. Because your risk from your own gun, your own hand, is greater than it is from a violent felon, from a violent situation. Over 180 law enforcement officers die from suicide every year. And firefighters, well, you're not there, but you're not far behind. And we ignore it at our own peril. If you have done this job for any amount of time, you have lost friends to suicide. Just off the top of my head, I can think of two. One of them was not only a law enforcement officer, but he was also a powerlifting friend of mine. Competed in many national and international and state powerlifting competitions with him. And he ended his own life. I had another friend who I worked with very closely. In fact, I knew him from high school. We went to high school together. And we ended up working for the same law enforcement department years later. And he and I, we had such a great time together. Sometimes we'd work the same beat, and it was kind of a violent, more crime-ridden area. And he was this really good-looking guy, but it really thin, really fit, really fast. And he'd always say, "Okay, look, Wimmer, here's the plan. If somebody chases us, if somebody runs from us, I'll chase him and I'll catch him. But you've got to be there real quick because I'm not fighting, man. I'm not messing up this beautiful face. You can get there and you need to put him in cuffs." And one night that actually happened. The guy took off from us, and my buddy takes off after him, and just fast as could be. The guy goes over the fence. My friend goes over the fence. I go through the fence, and I hear off in the distance, I hear, "Wimmer, Wimmer," and I'm running as fast as I can. But I'm not that quick. And I come running around the corner of an apartment complex, and there in the grass, and there my buddy has the suspect on the ground, arm lengths away, has his arm stretched completely as far away as he can, pushing the bad guy, holding him, but pushing him as far away as he can from his face. He's like, "Get him, get him, get him." And so I go and I tackle the guy, and I get him in handcuffs. It was hilarious. Well, my dear friend who I'm talking about, he was deployed a couple times, being a part of the military as well. And one of the times he returned and continued to work for the police department, and he went missing and was located a day or so later in his vehicle, having taken his own life. We all have experienced situations like that if you've had any amount of experience as a police officer or a firefighter. And it's heartbreaking and heart-wrenching. It is devastating, and it doesn't need to be this way. It does not need to be this way. We've got to take steps to stop the death and the tragedy. We've got to rip off the stigma of mental health issues in our line of employment. But even if suicide don't get you, we have all sorts of issues in law enforcement and firefighting communities. And what we see is a destruction of the family unit. There is so much family dysfunction in firefighting families and law enforcement families. We see cold marriages. We see uninvolved couples. We see the non-law enforcement spouse oftentimes feeling alone, as if they are raising their family alone because of the withdrawing law enforcement or firefighting spouse. We see a divorce rate that, depending on the study, just from my experience, and many studies do confirm, the divorce rate in the law enforcement community is worse, numerically worse than the average citizen. And the divorce rate in the firefighting community is also worse than your average citizenry. This should not be. Where does this come from? When you meet the girl, the man, the person of your dreams, and you decide that you want to spend the rest of your life with them, you're so in love, you want to be with them. Where does it go wrong? When does it fall apart? When do we start casting blame? This is a serious issue. And what happens to cause family dysfunction? Well, there's a lot of reasons why. And we're going to have some mental health experts on to just parse this out for you. We're going to have people who are going to talk specifically about this issue we're discussing now. But as a person who has spent a quarter century of his life in the law enforcement area, in the area of being a first responder, and having studied this issue in depth, I can tell you that there are a variety of problems, and I want to discuss a few of them. The first issue that we have in law enforcement and in firefighting is this yin and yang of our life. What I mean by that is this: when you go to work as a police officer or a firefighter, you are living on the edge. Now, oftentimes your shift is kind of boring, but you never let your guard down. Law enforcement officers know what I'm talking about when I say never ever allow yourself to get out of condition yellow. And when you're on duty, you should be right on the border of condition yellow, condition orange, ready to jump to condition red, right? You know what I'm talking about. Maybe the citizens who hear this don't know. But we are always on guard, always on edge. When we face an emergency situation, whether it's in the fire side or the law side, our adrenaline is going. We are hyper vigilant. We see things and we're rallying. We get to that traffic accident where the car's on fire and there's a child stuck inside, and we are rallying, we are moving, we are just going and doing what we can to save lives. And the adrenaline is dumping and the chemicals are coursing through our veins, and this just it's overload, and it's exciting, and it is an adrenaline rush. And you live like that day in and day out at work. But every time you have situations like that at work, every time you're under incredible amounts of stress at work, when you go home, your body physically goes in the opposite direction as a recovery method. That's oftentimes why when a million things could have happened on duty during your shift, but when you get home and your spouse says, "Hey, how was work?" "Yeah, it was fine." You go take your gun belt off and you zone out. You get undressed, take your gun belt off, take your vest off, take your shoes off, and you zone out the rest of the day. You don't engage in the family. You don't engage with your spouse. You don't engage with the kids. You zone out. And in large part, you're exhausted. You're tired. You went from hypervigilant to tired and fatigued, and your body's trying to recover and balance itself out. And so who gets the best of you? Everybody during your shift. Who gets the best, the most functioning, active person in your life? Who gets that when you're at your best? The people at work, the people you're working with, the people you're dealing with, they get the best of you. And when you get home, they get the crap, because of this yin and yang of hypervigilance to really kind of hyper depressed. And I don't mean depressed in the mental state. I mean depressed in the physical state. Your body goes from hypervigilant to hyper depressed. And so your family gets stuck with your work partners get stuck with Superman. You get home and your family gets stuck with Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. And you can't live like that. And they can't live like that. Another problem is over time, you get a jaded view of the world. I mean, without question, you are dealing with the underbelly of society in law enforcement. In firefighting, you're dealing with death. You're dealing with people who you try to save. You might do CPR. You might do advanced rescue and advanced first aid on somebody, and you hope to save their life. Maybe it's a child, and you're just hoping that your skills can bring them back, and they die. You're dealing with violence, you're dealing with death, and you're dealing with darkness. And do that long enough, and you get a jaded view of the world. Not good. Not good, because it's hard to separate that jaded view of the world from your family and your home life. Your identity oftentimes gets wrapped up in what you do. Somebody says, "Hey, what do you do?" You're just hanging out somewhere at the park, say, and the guy sits down next to you and says, "Oh, hey, what do you do?" You say, "I'm a cop." "Oh, I'm a fireman. I'm a firefighter." What you do becomes your identity. And that is far more the case for frontline emergency workers, first responders. You rarely see that identity encapsulate from any other career. You don't have your mechanic or your custodians or your street construction workers find their identity in what they do. Very rarely does that happen. That's a part of who they are, but it's not their identity. However, in law enforcement and firefighting, it becomes our identity. And the more that becomes our identity, the less other things become our identity. Instead of being, "Oh, I'm a dad, I'm a mom, I'm a husband, I'm a wife, I'm a baseball coach, I'm a track coach, I am a church leader, I am a member of my service club, I'm with the Rotary." No, you're a cop, you're a firefighter. And the smaller your identity gets, the more you start to push other things that you need out of your life. There's a statistic that I heard recently while I was listening. I wish I could credit the person I heard say it. And I looked to find it online, so you got to take it with a grain of salt. But the person was talking about some mental health with first responders and said that statistically speaking, after the police academy, most law enforcement officers don't go to the gym again. They stop working out eventually. Well, we know that's true because 80% of you are obese or overweight. Most law enforcement officers stop going to church. If they attended church during the police academy or prior to the police academy, they stop going to church after. They stop going to the functions that create social connection. And if they're forced to go by their spouse, many times you sit in the corner. You sit in the corner and you scroll on your phone and you can't wait until it's time to go home. If you were not antisocial before you became a police officer or a firefighter, rest assured, given enough time, you will be antisocial. This creates a horrible cycle. You have the incredible stress at work that cycles into having no energy at home. So then you eventually figure you got to medicate. You got to medicate somehow. You've got to get through this. So many, many, many law enforcement officers and many firefighters turn to alcohol as the first form of medication. Maybe you medicate on gaming. You're a gamer. You play video games. Okay, whatever your medication is, but all too often the medication is either alcohol or really unhealthy food. You medicate on food, and that is huge. That is food is actually my choice of medication when I'm stressed or I'm depressed. I can eat through an entire bag of whatever you want to put in front of me when I'm stressed or depressed. Give me whatever, and I'll eat it. That's my medication of choice. And it's probably many of yours medication of choice. And so then you feel like crap because you ate like crap. And so you have even less energy, and then you have more stress. And you're stuck in this hamster wheel of no energy, high stress. You work through it when you're at work, but you come home and you zone out and you unplug. And it's destroying your family. It's destroying your family. And if this sounds like you at all, I am begging and pleading with you. Get help. Stop this insanity. Reach out to a mental health professional and find tools to help you and to help your family. As a firefighter and as a police officer, you will put yourself at risk. In fact, you will put your very life on the line for strangers and people you don't even know, and yet you won't lift a finger to fight to save your marriage or to save your family. And I know I'm talking harsh here, but you need a harsh wake-up call. You need to be willing to fight. Fight. If you're willing to fight for the death, fight to the death at work. To take a tweaker to jail. Or to fight for whatever the case may be, defending an innocent person that you don't know. You should be willing to fight your guts out for your loved ones. But too many times we apathetically sit there as our family fades away, as the love in our marriage fades away, as the passion, the romance, the sex fades away. And the next thing you know, you're living with strangers and they are living with someone they don't know. Their husband, their wife, their mom, their dad that they love is no longer the person that they used to know. I beg of you to get help. And there are things you can do. First of all, one of the most important things, let's just talk from the department down. If your police department does not have training on emotional support and emotional survival for law enforcement, your department is failing you. If you are a chief of police, if you are a sheriff and you are watching this, shame on you if you are not equipping your officers to survive emotionally. Their families are falling apart, their marriages are falling apart, and we are losing too many to suicide. If you're a fire chief, same situation. If you're the captain of a firehouse, same situation. This should not be an occasional thing that it's optional training. It should be mandatory training every single year given to every officer, giving them a tool belt on how to navigate this job we call firefighting and law enforcement, how to navigate it while not losing our soul or even losing our life. Now, perhaps you're the leader of a law enforcement agency or a firefighting agency that has never thought of this. Well, there's no shame there. But you now have heard this. There are very good training programs out there, very good resources. Find them and give your officers and your firefighters, your people in your firehouse and your police department the tools they need emotionally to survive. They need that training. Peer support. Peer support is growing. I was a peer support officer in my law enforcement departments. Peer support is something that we need. We need officers who are trained to be the support for their fellow officers, someone that has a little bit of cushion of anonymity. If an officer comes to them and requests help, this peer support program is a great program. Chaplaincy programs are fantastic. I can't tell you how much I relied on chaplaincy programs when I went through some very violent situations that I was too tough. I was the badass. I wasn't going to admit it for a second that it bothered me, but I reached out to the chaplains and they affected my life deeply. Departments need those programs available. And you know what? A chaplain service may be used one time in 10 years, but that one time could save an officer's life. It could save a firefighter's life. Firefighting chaplaincy that's something that is a lot less common, unfortunately, but they need it. They need it. Firefighters are dealing with death daily. And you cannot be surrounded by death and destruction and heartache and sorrow that often without having some kind of emotional support. And I know the tides are changing in many fire departments, but it needs to change quicker. This brings me to the number one thing that you could do for yourself as a fireman, firefighter, as a police officer. The number one thing you can do for yourself, and it's not hyperbole, but when you get home after a stressful shift, it is not time to sit down on your favorite couch and just doom scroll through Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and zone out from your family. No. You remember that 150 minutes of zone 2 cardio I've talked about so much? Yeah. Well, let's discuss that. Because in a March of 2023 article by Medical News Today, written by Robbie Berman, the conclusion after a deep meta-analysis of human beings, they discovered that exercise is more beneficial for conditions such as, quote, anxiety and depression than standard psychotherapy or medication. Let me read that to you again. A large new analysis of meta-studies finds that exercise is more beneficial for conditions such as anxiety and depression than standard psychotherapy or medications. Exercise is medication. I worked for a police department that paid an hour during your shift for you to work out. You could work out for an hour during your shift. And other officers would cover the calls if you were going to do it. You had to do it either before your shift or the end of your shift. I then went to a larger police department. And I was disappointed to discover that they do not pay or they do not allow for that. They did not have any kind of program where officers could work out on duty. And they changed it. I drafted up a proposal, and this police department said, okay, so we're going to either pay you at the beginning of your shift, give you an hour at the beginning of your shift or an hour after your shift, as long as there's not, priority one calls holding, we will let you go work out at the beginning of your shift or the end of your shift. You just cannot check out for lunch. You can take your lunch. You just cannot go off the grid. Okay. Fair enough. Because things slow down. If you're on graveyards, they slow down enough by 3 a.m. that you could usually grab lunch anyway, and you could eat. You never went hungry. But if your police department, let me just say this again, chiefs, sheriffs, firefighters, you pretty much have this down, because I see in most cases, most fire departments have gyms right inside the firehouse. If you don't, you need one. You have time to work out. You should be working out. This is more on the firefighter side of things the law enforcement side of things, because firefighters, they seem to have it together on this. Law enforcement, if you are in charge, a chief, a sheriff, and you don't provide an opportunity for your officers to work out at the beginning of their shift or at the end of their shift, you are missing the boat tremendously. You will get better work out of your officers by allowing that. In fact, you shouldn't just allow it. Knowing what we know about the benefits of exercise towards mental health, towards potentially preventing suicide, for potentially saving family units, for potentially saving your deputies, your officers' marriages, for saving their attitudes and providing them an opportunity to benefit in their personal life and their on-duty life. You should dang near make exercise 30 minutes to 45 minutes per shift mandatory. You should make it mandatory. And I know that there's officers out there right now freaking, no. And that's all the more reason why it should be mandatory. Because do you want your officers full of antidepressant medication? If they're driving around like that, they're DUI in most states. Do you want your officers medicated from pharmaceuticals? Or do you want them to have something that has been proven to be more effective than pharmaceuticals to keep their minds sharp, to keep their body sharp? Not only are you helping them mentally, but you're helping them physically. The medical retirement and the medical issues that law enforcement have, the injuries they have, could almost all be mitigated, or at least significantly reduced, if agencies would provide a method for their officers to get more exercise. And I'm telling you, in the long run, if you were to start today and say, officers, we will now pay you for 45 minutes at the beginning of your shift or at the end of your shift, or an hour at the beginning or an hour at the end, for you to exercise. And here's your gym. Here's where you can work out. We have paid a membership at the local gym. We've entered into an agreement, or maybe you have the fitness center on the campus of your department. But if you started pushing this and encouraging it, and you studied for the next 5 years the amount of on-duty injuries, the amount of mental health leave days that people have to take, the amount of just overall savings that you would have in 5 years, I would be shocked if it was not a net benefit to your police department. I'd be shocked if you didn't save on insurance claims and injuries and lost days of work for sickness and mental health, if you would just start prioritizing physical fitness in your police department. Officers, firefighters, listen to me. Your family's survival is on the line here. In fact, your survival may be on the line. You can only go through this cycle of stress, depression, and emotional numbness for so long before it catches up to you. I cannot possibly plead with you any stronger. From all of us here at Frontline Fitness, we are begging you to get help, seek counseling, Seek help from those who love you, those who care about you. Go talk to a counselor, go talk to a chaplain. Let them know that you are not doing well. And it is okay to not be okay. In fact, if you are completely okay in this job after many, many years and you are totally fine, I wonder what kind of person you really are. Now, maybe you have some sociopathic tendencies, which doesn't mean you're an evil person at all. Doesn't mean you're a bad person at all. But for the rest of us, if you've been in this job for any amount of time, you're not completely okay. At the very least, start exercising. Start getting that early morning walk. Start getting that 150 minutes of zone 2 cardio every week. Start lifting weights. There is nothing that you could do, no action that you could do that would be more powerful for your physical health and your mental health. You might just save your marriage. You might just salvage a broken family. And you might just save your own life if you start doing this. Just know that we at Frontline Fitness, we love you. Firefighters, law enforcement officers, we love you. Coach Wimmer here, I love you. I've worked with you. I have bled with you. I have been in the trenches with you. I know what you go through. And you may be going through a dark time right now. And you may not see a light at the end of the tunnel. I promise you there is. When you find yourself walking through hell, keep going because you'll get through it. But you've got to stop being your own worst enemy. You have got to be somebody who will advocate for yourself. Family members, if you're a wife, a husband, a spouse of a loved one, get them help. Give them a gym membership. Get them off their fat ass and make them go work out. It could save the life of your loved one. Until next time, be good to yourself. Be good to others. And as always, stay safe.